57-yard touchdown run by the magical quarterback Lamar Jackson.
Big Keith Trailer, look at him rumble.
Here we are then, Utter Punts touching down for the very first time. The new season's upon us and we're ready to blitz the NFL conversation. Get your heads in the game because the play clock's running.
This is not Detroit, man. This is the Super Bowl. Touchdown! No! No! 24-yard attempt. Oh, he hits the upright. It's no good.
Derek Johnson, the all-time leading tackler in the history of the Chiefs.
And he misses it. That's impossible. The Cardinals have knocked the Vikings out of the playoffs.
I am well up for this. It's great to have you listening for the very first episode of Utter Punts, an NFL podcast made by UK fans of the National Football League. I'm Liam Bradford, I'm a sports journalist based in Manchester, and for my sins, I'm a Giants fan. I'm joined by two NFL experts who love this game. I'd put their insight and knowledge up against any Yank any day. Yeah, I said it. First up, he puts the irk in Kirk Cousins. Dave Keane joining us live and direct from Birmingham, England. Go on then, Dave.
You're already coming with the Cousins stuff at this point. Your face offends me, quite frankly. You look like a blown up Aaron Rodgers and yet somehow managed to look nothing like Nick Cage. I'm a little bit confused as to what's going on there.
Setting the toe, Dave. I do actually look a little bit like an Aaron Rodgers sort of stretched out, blown up version. Alongside me is the brains of this operation, though. It's Ravens fan Dan Horton.
Generous. Season predictions coming up in the show shortly. Here's one for free, though, or a couple for free. The Vikings have made the playoffs 30 times in their history, which is the sixth most in the NFL, and they're 6-4 to do so again this year, which I think is a great bet. They are, however, one of 11 teams that's never won the Super Bowl, and my best bet of the year is that they definitely won't win it again this year.
Oh, he's giving Keno a kicking in the intro. Welcome to Utter Punts.
No glory hunters here.
One glory hunter here. Essentially, the Giants winning the Super Bowl was what got me into the NFL in the first place. So, technically, glory hunter. Although, I think that's now knocked on the head, considering how shit they've been for the last, 5, 6, 8 seasons.
No, I think whenever you beat the Patriots in a Super Bowl twice, you're a lifelong fan. You can. We all have a soft spot for that.
Works for me. Right, look, we've got loads of stuff that we want to cover. We want to talk to you a little bit about fantasy. We want to talk to you a little bit about betting. We want to do some predictions ahead of the new season. We're going to talk a little bit about Tom Brady as well after his 11-day absence. But we're going to start off by sort of giving you some credentials. The reason that we're here, the reason that we love the NFL. So we'll start with Dave, shall we? We already have established that you're a Vikings fan, but how did you fall in love with the NFL, Dave?
Well, I fell in love with the NFL mainly through fantasy football. A friend of mine who was a Browns fan, and we all know how that's turning out for people who have that particular leaning at the moment, led me down a dark path of destruction and loss and heartache. I had already had a slight affiliation for the Vikings due to some people that I met at university who were Vikings fans that lived over there when they were kids. So it was kind of forced upon them by the normal means of having been in the region. And they exported it back to me like a disease, like a pure disease.
Disease? I'm not sure you can call it that. What about you? You're a Ravens fan, Dan. How did that come to pass?
Followed the NFL for years, but then really got into it sort of 10, 15 years ago, and I've been probably more of an avid fan since then, just with the competition level. So I got a bit bored with sort of following the Premier League and football in general, where it's a handful of teams can win everything every year. There was an increase in sort of non-existent games that didn't really matter if you won or lost. 14 competitions a year and whatnot. And the NFL, everything counts. Every game, every second, everything that's played is it matters and it counts. And I think that's I think I've become really addicted to that, and I really love that.
I always think of you as being quite sort of numbers driven as well. So a game like the NFL where stats sort of rule the world. In fact, American sports in general, where stats rule the world, it seems like it might be right up your street, really.
It is, and then sort of being able to track that and making some sort of starting to be able to predict sort of games and things like that became really interesting a few years ago. And you could make a case this year for probably half the league winning the Super Bowl, and I don't think there's many sports where you can do that.
From my point of view, I was really fortunate. I got invited to watch Super Bowl. Must have been back in, 2012, 2013, somewhere around there, and I've been working with Colin Murray, who's a big NFL fan, at Radio 5 Live, and he invited me to a Super Bowl party where he sort of made chili and we all sat there till stupid o'clock in the morning drinking beer. And it was at that point that I realised that I just loved the spectacle of it all. I just loved the pomp and the fanfare around big games like the Super Bowl. And then that sort of led me into watching a couple of games on a Sunday, and then all of a sudden it became, oh, hang on a second, I'll watch it 3 Sundays out of 4, and now it's don't miss a Sunday, and all of that kind of sort of ticked over, and then fell in love with the Giants, really, and the way they play football. And part of that was because it remains the only NFL stadium that I've been to. I didn't go and watch a game. I went to watch Bruce Springsteen, but I've still been to Meadowlands. So, yeah, I think that's how I ended up doing what I'm doing. We had a little fantasy draft
as well.
Have you? What? Yeah, did you watch a game?
No, I went and watched WrestleMania.
Dan, have you been to Meadowlands? Please tell me you've been and you've watched a game.
Yeah, we watched the Jets game there, which was enjoyable for the other team.
See, so he's the only one that's been to Meadowlands and actually watched a game of football. Talk about putting your credentials on the line. We had a little fantasy draft earlier this week, didn't we? Where we all decided that we were going to start an Utter Punts fantasy league. So 4 teams. So there's me, Dan, Dave, and producer Andy. And we all thought it would be a good idea to set up a league just to put some money where the mouth is. Looking at the teams that we all picked, who do you think, Dave, is strongest at this point?
Me, because obviously, my team is by far the best. I mean, I've got Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey running back, which, if McCaffrey basically manages to last, I don't know, 14 games, I'll probably be in pretty good shape there. And quite frankly, the depth of wide receiver is ridiculous in a draft with this many teams. And more than anything, I stole a certain quarterback from Dan, which can only be described as a pleasing piece of business. 1 pick before, just when you were going to take him.
Out of friendship, I left yours there for you, and you took mine. It's not on, Dave.
You left my quarterback for me.
Yeah.
You left 2016 Teddy Bridgewater for me.
Are you just completely blanking Kirk Cousins from the history of the Vikings? Is this what's happening?
No. I can't ignore it. When we signed him, I at the time I was a little bit active. I'm one of the Vikings fans forums, and I said that if we get him, then we're probably not going to win anything with him because he lacks the ability to be composed in difficult situations. And when you hate getting proven correct over and over and over and over again, that happens pretty much all the time, because it's even worse. You get to a point where you start actually believing that he's got good processing, he's got good arm talent. Okay, he's not that mobile in the pocket, but he can do it.
34 really dull minutes later.
At some point, I'd love to see Kirk step up and take accountability and responsibility for his own actions. And if he does that, who knows? He may well become a man, eh? He may become a man one day.
Well, thanks for joining us. That was the end of the podcast.
So what you may have realised there is that essentially all you need to do to get Dave on one is just say Kirk Cousins' name and off he goes. It's got sod all to do with fantasy or even the draft that we had in midweek. But he's not Kirk's biggest fan, are you, buddy?
Nah. I want to be.
Sorry to wrestle control of this podcast back to what we were supposed to be talking about and the little fantasy draft that we had. There were some strange decisions made by, I was going to say, by people that maybe haven't partaken in an awful lot of fantasy football seasons. I did take Eckler very early. Second overall, yeah. He was my first pick, yeah. Which everybody laughed at me afterwards. I didn't think that was a terrible decision. Why was that such a terrible decision?
There's just many players ahead of him in the ranks, I think. Much more potential. And at picking second, you've got a great opportunity to take a real top-level player. And I don't think he's that. As good as he is, and as good as the Chargers will be, I think Eckler's probably running back 4 or 5. I think there's probably 3 or 4 ahead of him. Never mind, you live by your choices.
Dave, what did you make of that selection?
I was delighted. I was picking after you.
It's like the Bears trading up to get Mitch Trubisky, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was exactly like that. Well, one of those moments where it's like, right, okay, so I'm going to be left with more limited options. Oh no, someone's taken someone who wasn't even in my top 5. But having said that, he is a great player. I mean, Ekeler is.
Yeah, he is
one of the best dual threat running backs.
He'd still been there in round 5, wouldn't he? That's the thing.
He would still have been there a few rounds later. I mean, there were only 4 of us, and one of us was on auto pick. But and somehow, even though they were on auto pick, they somehow landed pick number 1 overall and ended up getting Taylor, which. As anyone who does pay attention to the league would know, that he won many a person a fantasy football league last year. So congratulations to our producer, Mr. Bell, who, despite a total lack of effort and application put into this thing, was predicted to go 15-0 by the computer.
He was as well. Look, for those that might be ready to draw fantasy this week or back end of this week ahead of the start of the season, who are the picks that people should be looking at?
It all depends on context, really. It depends on how many teams are in your league. That'd be the primary sort of point, really. How many players are there to go around? Normally, it's a fairly good tactic to go running back early because there aren't that many bell cow running backs left in the league. So if you can get one of those, it gives you an advantage. And then having some knowledge of the depth wide receivers in the league, the players who haven't yet featured in fantasy football because of injury last year or because they're only now entering the league. And there are players out there who you can see should have a decent impact. So you can find impactful wide receivers very late in the draft if there's anything less than 12 teams in the league.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it depends on what type of league you're in. Is it are you playing Superflex, which means you can play a quarterback in an extra spot? So do you need a 2-quarterback league? In which case you'd probably take someone like Josh Allen fairly early because he's a running back as well, but he's going to play, he's durable, and he's going to fill one of your slots. I had a chap in one of my leagues took Mahomes and Prescott in his first 2 picks because they're 2 slots he can fill every week. Like Dave said, I think running back is prestige, but if you can't get one of the good ones, don't stress. I would let it go and I would just pick wide receivers, especially if you're playing in sort of point per reception leagues. I think receivers going down, I mean, sort of round 4 and 5, Michael Pittman be brilliant in Indianapolis this year. He was good last year with Carson Wentz, so I imagine he's only going to improve with Matt Ryan there. And then young players, so Elijah Moore is apparently sort of absolutely tearing up at the Jets, and they're going to be a very aggressive offense this year. He'd be a good pick. Justin Jefferson, obviously, is probably the standout with Jamar Chase. But then you've got players like Cooper Kupp. You've got players like Devontae Adams, who's been almost forgot about because he's now got Derek Carr as his quarterback. But the Raiders made the playoffs last year, so I think he's still in for a good form. So there's probably 10 or 15 good receivers, probably only 5 or 6 good running backs top end. And again, it depends really what type of league you're in. But going in with any sort of plan tends to be a bad idea. You could have a strategy, so I'm going to take running backs and then the top 3 go. You're picking 4 and you have to sort of audible on the fly. So
I also went down the picking a couple of rookies route, working on the basis that, it's a bit of a gamble, but you never know what might happen. One of those that I took was Breece Hall, the running back at the Jets, who looks like he's in line to get some minutes this season. Like he seems to have been in pre-season, in those first and second quarters where they're playing first and second string on the depth chart. Now, there is some room there potentially for a rookie to make you some serious fantasy points this season.
Absolutely. I think in skill positions this year it was a decent draft, and the players are coming in leagues already now. I think there's probably 2 rookie running backs who will be the running back ones this year. I think Damian Pierce will start in Houston, and I certainly think Breece Hall will win that job in New York. But the wide receivers in this class, that was the hype really. And although Jameson Williams is injured, people like Drake London will have a monster year. I think in Atlanta he's only competing with a tight end for catches there. Garrett Wilson, I think Chris Olave and the Saints will have a big year as well.
Right, enough about talking about fantasy and how terrible I'm going to be and how brilliant you two are going to be, because that seems to be the only thing that I'm taking away from there. Let's have a look at predictions and how we think we're all going to get on over the course of the season. How do you want to do your predictions? You're going to start AFC, NFC? You're going to do divisions? How are you going to do it?
Do you want to go through the divisions?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, you
awesome.
start.
Okay, so let's get things going with the AFC East then. So we've got the Jets, the Bills, the Dolphins and the Patriots in there. They've had an interesting enough off-season. season offensive travails with the Patriots. They've got Matt Patricia somehow involved with their offense. I'm sure that the Lions fans will be most amused by that. The Dolphins have got Tua Tagovailoa throwing to Tyreek Hill. You know, it should be a very, very exciting connection so long as Tua can push the ball downfield effectively. I'm not saying he can't throw long. He can throw long, but every time I see him, there is a little bit of a wobble there, and it doesn't seem to be quite as convincing as, for example, Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen of the Bills, he is absolutely amazing. He has been since I think he first burst onto the scene, hurdling over Anthony Barr, a Minnesota Vikings linebacker who had never been hurdled prior to that. And then we've got the New York Jets, a team that many people think will be basically coming out all guns firing. I worry, though. I think Wilson has already been injured this offseason. I don't really sense that they are the team which is making that greater stride in terms of what they're able to put out on the field right now. I can't really see them contending. I don't think Hill's signing in Miami is going to be enough for them to get over the top. Mike McDaniel there, very good head coach, but very good coach. We'll see what he's like as a head coach. And I think the Bills will probably hold the division down. The Patriots just haven't got it for me, just simply because there seems to be a mess in terms of what they're doing after their offensive coordinator left at the end of last season. So, yeah, for me, it's going to be the Bills taking the AFC East.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with you. I think one of the safer predictions is the Bills win the East. So well done for starting with that one, Dave. Nice and
solid. Oh, well, you know, that's one to me, right? I could have found a way of disagreeing there. I mean, come on, Dan.
I think the Pats, I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors around there, but if the question about the Pats is the coaching with Belichick there, I'm not sure they'll be that bad. But I think you're right. I think Miami will take a step up. I think they'll do some damage this year with the firepower they've got. I still don't think it'll be enough for them maybe to make the postseason even. And I do think the Jets will be better. Like you said, the injury to Wilson's a bit of a shame. I do like him. But they're playing Joe Flacco week 1, so I know all about him.
Yeah, I've got no argument with any of that. Let's shift on to the AFC North, shall we? We'll give this one to the Ravens fan, shall we?
Thank you very much. I think it'll be a 2-team division. I think the Ravens and the Bengals are a bit of a step above the Steelers and the other team in Ohio. Steelers have gone through transition, not really got a starting quarterback, and their line has been fairly awful, so I think Najee Harris is in for a big year. But the Ravens, I think, have built this offseason to stop the Bengals, and to stop the Chargers, and to stop the Chiefs, and I think they'll start with their own division with that. And I'm going to be a bit of a homer, I think, and say it'll be Ravens, Bengals, other team in Ohio, Steelers.
Any arguments with any of that, Dave?
Yes, to an extent, just based on the fact that I think Kenny Pickett, the new quarterback in Pittsburgh, he's had a half-decent preseason, but what interests me more is George Pickens, their wide receiver, but they also took in this year's draft, who is a very violent human being, and the fact that they have Mike Tomlin, who is probably my favourite coach in the league. He tends to get his teams above 500, even when they have no right to be. They've been playing over the past few years with what is essentially the corpse of Ben Roethlisberger. It was like something akin to a weekend at Bernie's, watching him get wheeled out every week attached to that offensive line. And now that they actually have someone who actually has a pulse, and I'd like to point out that I have nothing against Ben Roethlisberger. He's past withstanding. He was a fantastic quarterback for the watch as I started getting into the NFL. It used to be that people bounced off him, and instead it ended up being the ball bouncing off him. It's a crying shame to see what came out. And I honestly think that losing him is addition by subtraction at this point. And Kenny Pickett, I imagine he's going to be the starter. I can't imagine why they'd want to roll with Mitch Trubisky, who can't throw to his left, according to Arif Hassan. But we are in a position now where I think that the Steelers will start to rise again. The Browns are obviously going to struggle without Deshaun Watson. He didn't look good anyway in the amount of time that he had. So, yeah, all in all, I can see it being Ravens, Bengals, but don't count out the Steelers sneaking in there and disrupting things and genuinely pissing off both fan bases who expected them to be gone and dusted for a little while at least.
I think Ravens are my AFC team, so I'm going to go with Dan on this one. I think I'm going to say Ravens to win in the North. Dave, that means you've got AFC South: Texans, Colts, Jags, Titans.
Yeah, let's not spend too much time in this particular division. The Colts are going to win it. There's nothing else really to talk about. They have the best team in that division. I don't think it's close.
I'm pegging the Colts to win this division as one of the bankers, Dave. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%, mate.
We'll get on to more bankers and betting very, very shortly. Right, Dan, that leaves you with West. Broncos, Chiefs, Raiders, Chargers.
A slight upgrade on the South. I think the Chargers will be very, very good. What they've added in the off-season is incredible, and I don't think they were that far away last year, given a few mistakes, but I think they've probably got one of the best quarterbacks in the league. They've obviously got a serious running back, and I think out wide they're great, but I think their defence this year will be absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to say the Chargers will take that division. I think the Chiefs will make the playoffs, but they'll probably come through in second. I just think they're going to have to figure a bit of stuff out early on with the offense, and especially without really having a front running back at the moment. I think the Broncos and Raiders are both vying for a third playoff spot out of that division, but I'm going to put the Broncos just ahead of the Raiders at the moment, just because I think adding Russell Wilson to that already very deep team will give them a bit of a boost. I can see three of these teams having winning records, Dave.
I wouldn't disagree with that synopsis, to be honest. Who would you argue is not going to have a winning record at the end of the season? Bearing in mind, you've got the Raiders sitting there with Derek Carr. You've got the Broncos sitting there with Russell Wilson and their receiving core. You've got the Chiefs who are the Chiefs and the Chargers. Is it feasible that all four of them end up with a winning record? I know that's a very rare thing indeed, but it is an impressive division.
My fear on the Raiders is the back end. I think they might just get stung a little bit, and especially having to play 6 games in division, I think it might just hurt them a bit too much. I think if they were in the South, they'd win it. But I do think with Waller not 100% fit, I know they've got Adams and Renfro, but I don't see much else around them when you compare them to everybody else. But I could see all four making it. I mean, the Raiders made it last year, and they've got Devontae Adams this year, so it could happen. The Chiefs have made the playoffs 7 consecutive years, which is twice as many as anybody else in concessions. So you have to pencil them in, and I think Mahomes is still an absolutely the best quarterback in the league. So
he is, but he no longer has Tyreek. Does that open up a little bit of hope for the likes of the Chargers? Can Juju Smith-Schuster, the likes of Skylar Moore, come in there and give them enough alongside Hardman to replace him? I don't know. Could be difficult.
That's why I would put the Chargers ahead. I think they've just lost a little bit on that end, and I think they'll figure it out. I think they've still got Travis Kelce. You know, they've still got a lot of players on the outside. They've got MVS to go deeper on them. But I think it'll just take them a few weeks to settle into that, and I think the Chargers might just get away a little bit early. But you know, they said when Brady left the Bucs that he was leaving, you know, his comfort blanket in Belichick, and he did okay without that, didn't he?
Let's switch, shall we, from AFC to NFC. Who's going first with the East?
I fancy a team in the East really strongly this year, and they're not even favourites to win it. I absolutely am. Cowboys are favourites to win that division, and they're awful. They've lost Amari Cooper. They've lost 2 of their best offensive linemen. The owner's talking about Zeke Elliott being the focal point of the offense. I think the Eagles are, pound for pound in the lines, the best team in the league. I think they've got 2 offensive lines and 2 defensive lines, and that rotation will be absolutely massive for them. They play the Giants twice, they play the Commanders twice, they play the Cowboys twice. They've got the second easiest strength of schedule in the league. For me, the Eagles are an absolute banker to win the NFC East. Cowboys probably second, because Dak is good and they have got some firepower with CeeDee Lamb. After that, maybe the Giants over the Commanders, but really, I mean, if they get to 5 wins each, I'd be happy with them. But for me, the Eagles are absolutely head and shoulders in that division.
The only thing I would say is Carson Wentz isn't going to do anything with the Commanders. The Giants have brought in Brian Daboll, is it, from the Bills as new head coach? It'd be interesting to see if he can put together some of the help that they gave Josh Allen early in his run there. But, I mean, for me, Mike McCarthy, the Cowboys, his offense was stale when he had Aaron Rodgers. And with the best will in the world, Ezekiel Elliott, he probably isn't even the best running back on his own team with Tony Pollard proving to be more effective. I like the shout of the Eagles. I'm gonna go with that. I'm sorry, Liam. I was looking for a way to maybe bolster the chances of New York, but years of bad draft picks are basically biting you on the backside there, aren't they?
Do you know, for me, a good season would be 6 wins and Saquon making it through without picking up another injury. I think if they can keep Barkley fit for the whole season, they stand a far better chance than they did last year, and they managed to pick up 3 or 4, didn't they, last year? So let's just pray that they can keep Barkley fit and Daboll can, really fire them up to just make a step forward, make an improvement in what we've seen in recent seasons. Right, let's move on to the North, shall we, Keno?
Well, okay, so the NFC North is actually interesting this year. The Vikings are a massive unknown quantity, but we have Kirk Cousins, so I'm going to say that we're not going to win it. And the Packers have lost Adams. It's one of those. Don't get me wrong, I wish I was wrong. I really do. I want Kirk Cousins to be able to dance on my grave saying I told you so with a collection of Super Bowls with the Minnesota Vikings names on them, but I doubt it very much. Aaron Rodgers is class. I actually got a couple of Packers fans a couple of years ago to say that he needed to be replaced. I was delighted. They then drafted David Love. That also really pleased me. But unfortunately, he's not somehow forced Rodgers out yet, so they still have Aaron Rodgers. But the Chicago Bears, Ryan Pace, okay, you want to do a rebuild, brilliant. Well done, mate. Why are you trying to get a quarterback who might have a future absolutely killed and ruined? Give Justin Fields some help, my friend. Otherwise, he will be dead. Even when you do work out, he might be able to help your team win in the near future. And then you've got the Detroit Lions, who've got Dan Campbell, and Dan Campbell is brilliant. I love Dan Campbell. They're going to bite people's knees. They're going to keep getting up, and they're going to give it everything. They've got everything going for them. They've got Penei Sewell, who's a standout in the draft, and who's going to turn into a really good left tackle. They're building themselves a running game. They're building themselves a passing game. They're building themselves from the trench. D-line is good. They're basically doing everything right. And then you've got Jared Goff at quarterback, who I've had a problem with Jared Goff since I watched an episode of Hard Knocks, and there was a conversation between him and Case Keenum, who was the predicted starter for the Rams at that point. And it was Goff telling a story about how there was a fight on the field, and because he didn't want to get hurt, he ran away. And he told it in the way where this is funny. And I just thought, yeah. He also didn't know where the sun came up, and these are worrying things indeed. They've always stuck with me as you're really going to spend that high draft pick on this guy. Well done, Mr. Fisher. But yeah, all in all, I think that the Packers probably still will win it all. The Vikings, if Kevin O'Connell can somehow turn Kirk Cousins into less of a coward. I'm sorry, I was trying to be nice. I mean,
true colours.
Turn him into a more composed human being when the game is on the line. Right, that's what I really meant. Who knows? Maybe we can squeeze out a few more wins. So yeah, Packers will win. I don't really know where else to go with it, Dan. They're probably going to tell Tommy, no, it will be the Vikings, just to try and lift my hopes.
I bow to your Viking knowledge, but if everyone stays fit, I think the Vikings are the better team. And I've looked at some of the odds today, and the Packers are the shortest price division winner favourite in the NFL. And I'm not having it. I don't buy it at all. I mean, the Vikings have been average the last 3 or 4 years, but the Lions and the Bears have been atrocious. And I think if you're playing in a division and you're half decent, and you're playing with two teams who are garbage and trying to get the number one pick from week one, I think you're going to have a good record. They've been showing up against hard-nosed teams, healthy teams in the playoffs every year since. They've had home field advantage for the last 2 years and not done a thing. So I disagree, Dave. I think the Vikings will win the North, and I think the Packers will probably come second, but then let's cheer on the Lions. They've been a good laugh, haven't they?
Oh, yeah, very much so.
Right, on to the South then. Dan, this one's you. Falcons, Panthers, Saints, Bucks.
I mean, I'm pretty certain the Bucks will win the division, although I think they'll start slowly again. We'll come on to, I think, Tom Brady a little bit later on, but their offensive line has been absolutely torn apart. The centre's gone. Their best right-sided defender, Tristan Wirfs, is injured, and he's not practiced all off-season, and the left guard has retired. He's out for the season as well. So that's three new offensive linemen that Brady hasn't played with. He's lost Chris Godwin for the first part of the season. He's lost Antonio Brown, obviously, after that lunacy last year. He's lost Gronk. I think they'll figure it out. He's done this in New England 15 years on the bounce, and like he said, I've played loads of games. I've been in loads of pre-seasons. I know what I'm doing. I trust him, and I think the Bucks will win the division. And I know Dave hates the Saints and thinks they're overtalked. I think the Saints will push them close. I think they'll start well. I think everything goes well. I think they'll be a playoff team. Their defense is outstanding. It's probably the best in the league. The other two, the Falcons, might be fun to watch with Drake London and Kyle Pitts. That might be fun if they didn't have Marcus Mariota at quarterback. Although I am sort of hopeful that Desmond Ridder will get a chance there because I think he's very, very good. I would say the Bucks are quite clearly going to win that division, but I do think the Saints will make it interesting from the start.
I'm going to do something that no sane human being should do, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm going to give Baker Mayfield 100% backing. And I'm going to say that the Panthers sneak that division.
Wow. That's a big call, Dave Keane.
It really is. But we've got Christian McCaffrey back. We were discussing him earlier. And just because he's in my fantasy team, that means he's going to be robust as hell this year. I've been firmly in my thoughts and manifest that for him. And we'll go down the route of basically pointing out that Baker Mayfield, former number 1 overall pick. Who's the best quarterback in that division? Well, that will be Tom Brady. But at some point, Tom Brady has to break. And, why can't it be now? But they don't have Antonio Brown. They don't have Gronkowski. We know nobody's having to actually take time off during the off season and to go and do something with the family or to be on whatever singing show it is rumoured he's been on. Who knows what he's really been up to? It probably is just spending time with the missus and the kids, for which he should be applauded. But he also tried to leave. For me, if you're in a relationship because the only reason you're still there is because you couldn't get something better, then maybe things aren't quite as smooth in that house as we are led to believe. And we'll see where we get to this season. But I'm going to go with Baker Mayfield pulling off heroics, getting the Panthers a massive 10-7 winning stats line that leads to them actually getting into the playoffs this year. And the Bucks will finish 9-8.
Wow. All right. I hope producer Andy's written those down and is going to lock them in a safe somewhere so we can beat Dave Keane around the head with it later in the season when it turns out that he was completely and utterly wrong.
But if it turns out I'm right.
Yeah, then we're cancelling the podcast and never doing another. NFC West is the last division that we're going to look at before we talk about Super Bowl and who might be getting there. So Cards, Rams, 49ers and Seahawks. Can't look too far past Levi's Stadium, can you? Who's taking this one?
Well, for me, I am basically going to go with the Rams. The Seahawks are dying a death. The Cardinals, I don't think will be anywhere. I think Mr. Kingsbury is going to get himself fired. I don't think Kyler Murray is the kind of guy who shows longevity down the season. The 49ers currently have got Trey Lance coming in, who I'm sure will be very effective with his legs. He probably is an upgrade on Jimmy Garoppolo from the athletic perspective. Can he throw the ball as well as Mr. Garoppolo? Probably not, but then he's also not made of glass, so he'll be an upgrade. Yeah, it is between the 49ers and the Rams. I am tempted to just go with the Rams as reigning Super Bowl champions. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you pick, Dan, who you think, and I'm going to go with the other team just for entertainment value because I think it is that close.
Yeah, it's a tough division to call, I think. But the Seahawks are out of it. Let's put them fourth, shall we?
Yep.
I think the Cardinals third. I don't think they've done enough to help Kyler Murray this year. And like you say, I think the coach is on dead water and he's certainly the first man out the building with the contract they've given Kyler. So 49ers, Rams, I think the 49ers will win it this year. I love Trey Lance. I think he is going to be an absolute megastar. I've got vibes of Patrick Mahomes after sitting his first season coming in. I'd almost outside tip him for MVP because if there's going to be that much spotlight on him, he'll get that much coverage. If he plays well, if he does what we think he's capable of doing in that Kyle Shanahan offense, I think he could be absolutely magic. They've got Deebo Samuel, they've got 23 running backs, they've got Brandon Ayuk on the outside, they've got Kittle to block for them because they don't need to catch it anymore. I mean, they are an absolute powerhouse, and they weren't that far away last year. You know, they knocked the Packers off in Lambeau, even though it's cold in there, apparently. And they were very close to beating the Rams, and that was with Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think Lance could be, because it's all speculation, he could be a massive upgrade. And I think if they upgrade at that position, they could be the winners of the West.
That's why we're in the conversation
so you're going Rams,
for me, but I'm going to go with the Rams. I'm going to go with the Rams because what kind of idiot bats against the Super Bowl champs who are coming back with most of their team? Hey. But no, I think you may. Yeah, I definitely am. But no, I'm going to take the Rams and I'm going to sit on that quite happily on account of the fact that Trey Lance has had how many throws in his entire career, and I'm talking college as well. I think it was 160 odd throws for North Dakota State. It wasn't that many. I'm going to say that he won't actually be able to cope with the rigours of a full season of NFL football, and he will fade towards the end of the season, and that is why the Rams will pip it. Now that you pip the 49ers, and I no longer have to justify them winning the division. Cool.
Oh, Andy, please snip that he can't throw the ball. Please, promise me.
Yeah.
Snip that.
Producer Andy is on it immediately.
For the full season. Not he can't throw the ball early. Of course he'll be able to throw the ball early, but he hasn't had that much experience. He hasn't had that many live reps at all. Not even at college level.
You are either going to sound like a savant at the end of this, or you're going to sound like a complete lunatic. It's going one or two ways, Keno.
Well,
We've already established the ground lines, haven't we? The lines are drawn in the sand that every time Dan's does something good, I'm going to ram it down Dave's throat. Every time he misses a pass, he's going to kill me for it.
I'm just going to wait and see. I'm going to go so far as to say Trey Lance is the new Carson Wentz. He may well have a successful opening season, but in the long term, he will not last in the league.
Aware that this is sort of rattling on, so I want the two teams that are going to make it to the Super Bowl and your Super Bowl winners, please, boys. That's the only other predictions that we're doing. So two teams that are going to make it to the Super Bowl and who's going to win it. We'll start with you, Dan.
Oh, tough one. I think NFC is between two teams. I'm going to say 49ers will make the Super Bowl this year. I think they nearly did it last year, and I think they're better. So why not? AFC is tough because it goes against every instinct in my body. I've got family that are Bills fans, so I hope the Bills do it, but I think they had their chance last year. I think it might be as good as they are. I think the Bengals were amazing last year and they made the Super Bowl, but I think they maybe had their chance. I think everything sat right for them. So somebody different. I can't pick the Ravens, too obvious. I'm going to go the Chiefs.
Chiefs, Niners, and winner of the Super Bowl is...
They're 49ers.
Dave Keane.
Very, very interesting indeed. Right, I'm going to actually do what you weren't willing to do, and I'm going to take the Ravens to make the Super Bowl from the AFC.
Get in, Dave.
I do think the Steelers are going to be better than they have been in recent times. I just think Lamar Jackson is one of the top three quarterbacks in the league. I love watching him play, and when he's on fire, he's every bit as good as Mahomes. Mahomes has been more consistent so far, fully acknowledge that, but I love Lamar Jackson. And then from the NFC, well, I am going to throw it out there. I'm going to go with the Packers making one more Super Bowl.
Come on.
And I think their defense is really, really good, mate. I mean, I get what you're saying about their offense, I do, but I think they're kind of set up for almost a Denver Broncos, Peyton Manning class run for Rodgers.
Whoa. Hang on a second, because this sounds very much like the Vikings fan is about to back the Packers to win the Super Bowl.
No. To make the Super Bowl, right, and then
Oh, don't do it to me,
Dan.
Yeah,
I'm gonna predict that the Ravens are gonna win the Super Bowl. Basically means, Dan, that if you do anything other than win the Super Bowl, you have failed to meet my expectations for the Ravens.
I suppose I better make a prediction, hadn't I? Considering
Austin Eckler MVP.
Yeah, so considering right. Considering you two have gone so logical, I'm going to go totally off gut. I'm going to go, namely because I've got the quarterback and the running back from the Chargers, they make it. And you made such a good argument about the Eagles that I'm going to go Eagles make it to the Super Bowl 2, Chargers win it. Right, we've already started on the betting. We've got the predictions in. Let's involve Casino, Keno and Desperate Dan, our two betting pundits. Explain what we're going to be doing over the course of the season, because we are going to start a train bet, but there's absolutely no point in doing that before sort of week 3 or week 4. So what are you planning on doing with your sort of betting picks over the course of the season? Dan?
So yeah, we're gonna put a train bet together. So Dave and I are going to get together and really find basically an even money bet, and it'll be points handicaps, it'll be total points, it'll be running back stats, it'll be quarterback stats, and we'll just find an absolute guarantee every week. And we're going to start with a fiver, and we're going to hopefully try and turn it into £100,000 by week 17, although we may skip week 17 because that's also a bit of a shambles sometimes. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I think we're going to put out some of these. I'll put together some onto the socials of what we've just said about the division winners, because I think there's some good value there in sort of trebles and doubles and things like that you want to put together. And I think I'll probably try and get Dave's MVP pick as well for the start of the season. I think for me, as an NFL fan, having sort of a light flutter at the start of the season and having interest in every week that goes by after that is the best way to do it. 4 or 5 teams that you're rooting for every week to do well, or a running back that you're hoping achieves so many yards in a season, or what have you. I think that's the way to do it, and that's the way to be successful. Now, the train bet, we'll get together and we'll post it. We'll probably talk about it a little bit on the pods each week before we probably drop it. And obviously we'll put it on our socials as well so that you can see it there, and we'll put it together with the odds and things like that. So
wicked. So for this week, have we picked anything out ahead of week 1, or are we just going to be really, really sensible and keep our money in our back pockets and not do anything daft?
Yeah, we nearly had one, and then we were talking about sort of sack totals in the Dallas Tampa Bay game, weren't we, Dave? And we both talked each other out of it.
Yep.
Which it's good, bodes well for the future that we can have that sort of level that we talked each other down. Now there'll probably be 20 sacks in that game now, I'm rest assured, but we just figure week 1 and week 2 are probably just a bit too spicy. Unless there's something that really jumps out from a points point of view. Defenses always kind of have the edge the first couple of weeks. You never quite get the offense clicking together, so we'll stay away from that, and we'll launch in week 2 or 3. I think for the first off, we'll just put some divisional stuff out there and season stuff out there to give you a flavour of what we're looking at.
So if you want to keep an eye on those bets that we pick out, or that Dan and Dave have got a good idea on, you can do so on Twitter. It's Utter Punts Pod, or on Instagram we're Utter Punts UK. So get involved on both of those socials, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Podcast as well, be really good to have you. The 2-minute warning hooter has sounded, boys. That means we have 2 minutes now before the end of the podcast to discuss any other business. I want you to come up with one rookie that's going to come out of nowhere to do bits this season for their team. Somebody that maybe is everybody's sleeping on, and we've got 2 minutes to get it underway. Who's going first, Dan or Keynote?
I'll go.
Go, Dan.
I think there's a quarterback in the league who's been drafted, and I don't think he's starting. I think a couple of years ago he would have been the number overall pick. He had a bad last year. Sam Howell at the Commanders has a great opportunity. Wentz is rubbish. The guy behind him is Taylor Heineke. We know what he is. I think Howell at some point, probably week 7 or 8, will get a chance. In pre-season he's looked very polished, he's very athletic, and I think he's a starting quarterback in the league, and right now he's hidden.
Okay, so that's Dan. Dave?
Well, I'm actually going to go with someone that I mentioned earlier. I'm going to go with George Pickens of the Pittsburgh Steelers. For me, he is the best wide receiver in this year's draft. I know that other people got taken ahead of him. I think that was due to character concerns. That character concern revolves around the fact that he likes to hit people and let them know that he's there. I don't know how cornerbacks are going to be able to cover somebody who genuinely enjoys getting involved in a run game and seems to have enough strength and power to send people flying. I've seen some little stab hits on some cornerbacks that have literally sent people freewheeling away from the man. I think he's going to be the next star wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and by the end of this season, I think he'll be considered their number 1 wide receiver. George Pickens.
That's it. It's all over. Utter Punts, episode 1 in the bag, wrapped up and done. It's been an absolute delight. Dan, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
See you next week. Dave, see you next week.
Pleasure.
Right, in the meantime, get yourself in there, get it rated, get it liked, and subscribe to the podcast. Share it with a friend. If you've got a group of NFL mates, tell them all about Utter Punts. We'll be doing this all the way through the season. It's been a delight. Catch you next time.